This is the monthly temperature record. There's the 0.17 degrees per decade. There's when it was supposed to have changed from 0.17 to 0.3, so that's what it was supposed to do between then and now, and that's what it did. It did nothing. In fact, that line is statistically indistinguishable from a line with zero slope at all. And then my friend Jim Hansen's been in the news recently, as you know. The most interesting one, we asked the revelation yesterday, was the $720,000 in equivalent legal funds from George Soros, for reasons that we may yet find out. Anyway, Hansen is in the business of saying that if Greenland warms up a few more degrees, that enough ice could fall off of Greenland in 100 years to raise the sea level 120 feet, which is a remarkably large number. Now, the problem is, okay, let's say Greenland warms up 4 degrees Celsius and stays there for 100 years. That's 4 times 100, 4 degree years of heat input to the Greenland, 400 years of heat input to the Greenland ice sheet, okay? Now, after the last ice age ended, it's well known from looking at trees that are buried in the tundra. Trees in the tundra do not rot, you can carbon date them. That the forest went all the way up to the Arctic Ocean for probably about 3 millennia after the end of the last ice age. And you know what the temperature has to be in July for the trees to actually be there. It has to be about 13 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it was prior to the Industrial Revolution. So it was clearly a lot warmer in the summer in the Eurasian Arctic for millennia. Let's just use a charitable number, okay? Let's say 2 degrees. And let's say that was averaged over 3,000 years. That's 2 degrees times 3,000 years. That's 6,000 degree years. Did 20 feet of ice fall off Antarctica, or fall off of Greenland in 100 years? That would be obvious. You would see the traces of that all over the land areas of the world. No, of course, it didn't happen. See, we make statements, and we can test them, either with numbers that we can get from data sources that are readily available, or from the historical scientific literature. And nobody challenges these things. That's what you call a climate coup. In fact, there's a very interesting history here. Hansen, let's see, let me test your literary knowledge, see if you get a rise out of this. On June 23rd, 1988, Hansen testified in front of Congress, and it was his testimony that lit the bonfire of the greenhouse vanities. Okay? It was very warm. There was a drought in the eastern United States. It's very hot. Mississippi River was near low record flow. And Tim Wirth, Senator Tim Wirth, they got together, and Wirth said, hey, let's open the windows in the hearing room the night before. And what that does is that disables the air conditioning, so that the room was intolerably hot the next day. And Hansen was wiping his brows, he was sweating, and everybody was sweating. In retrospect, what do you think of people distorting the local environment so much in order to set the world down a path that could be economically disastrous? This is horrendous when something like this happens. And at that very testimony, Mr. Hansen had a computer model for projecting climate change. He had 3 emissions scenarios. One of them I'm not going to show you because it said emissions became constant in 1988. That obviously didn't happen. The first, scenario A was called business as usual. That meant no major changes in laws, etc., etc. I claim in 1998, 10 years later, that we were on business as usual. Nothing had been done. And that was the only scenario worth showing, and Paul Krugman got mad at me for doing that. He gets mad at me about once a year because of that. So I'm going to show you both emissions increase scenarios that he had, scenario A and scenario B, which are emissions reductions codified that never happened. And I'm going to show you his own temperature record, the NASA GIST temperature history. There you go. There's scenario A, there's scenario B, and there's what's observed. The State Science Institute never admits that this is wrong, but this is telling you what's going on. You see, nature is adjudicating all their claims as we speak, and you can see what's happening. This is typical of comparisons of climate models and observed temperatures. Yes, you have a warming, And yes, it is of the same functional form as would be expected in the computer models, namely linear and not exponential. And yes, it is a much lower linear increase than is in the models, which tells you what's going to happen for the future. You know, when you have weather forecasting models that say different things, you tell students, look out the window, which one is working right today. And when you have climate forecasting models that say different things, you say, look out the climate window, which one is doing the best, and that's what's happening. So that's what's going on climate change. Well, I offer you the following. When you have a political process that concentrates power in the executive, when you have an educational process that scares children to death, when you threaten other people with death from global warming, and when you threaten trade wars from global warming, and the scientific literature that is used to do this is a biased and increasingly debased literature, there's been a coup. There's been an intellectual coup in this country and a policy coup, and that's why I wrote this book. And thank you very much.